Hey,
Hey guys.
welcome back. It's your girls, Alyssa and Molly, back
It's your
again,
boys.
saucers.
Yeah.
Molly, tell the beautiful saucers, little SOSers, what we're going to be talking about today.
So today we're talking about arguably the most important topic ever in life, which is living in alignment. It's a little bit cringy in title because I feel like those terms are like overused nowadays with everybody being like, I'm in alignment with but it's real.
Yeah.
And just like living in tune with your purpose. And another thing that I think that we are conditioned in this capitalistic society, when we say living in alignment with your purpose, I think most people go to career in their head. And it's like, oh, what's my purpose? Well, I'm a teacher. And that can ideally, what you do for work is aligned with your actual purpose, but they're not always one and the same. And so I think we're trying to take a deeper look at what alignment means, like living in alignment with who you are and what that actually means. It's not necessarily, do you have the right career?
Yeah.
That can be connected to it.
Oh, 100%. And I think a reminder of this can always be a good thing because I feel like it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to forget what calls to you.
And it's not a stagnant place or it's not a permanent, we're always fluctuating and evolving. So just because if at one moment you're like, wow, I feel really aligned with who I am and what's best for me and everything, I've reached it. If you don't keep checking in and consciously stay in tune with yourself, you'll fall off it because we're always you have to be constantly, checking in with yourself because little by little, for various reasons and valid reasons, we ebb and flow. So we fall off of that and before you know it, you don't always realize it as it's happening. And then one day you realize like something's not right. Like I'm not in alignment with myself. I'm not fulfilled. And when those happen, when you reach those times, it's really important to check in, but ideally to prevent those from happening very often, I think a consistent awareness of yourself is the only prevention.
That this is like a complete SOS moment is to realize you're not in alignment with yourself. And we're going to talk about our personal stories, but I feel like a lot of the ones we may have talked about already, especially with the ones that are, like have come to mind for me.
Yeah.
But ones that are consistently you can consistently have because when you're not checking in with yourself, it is really easy to be in denial.
Yes.
And make excuses for being comfortable in a situation that isn't actually right for you, right for your future. And we want to just make this a safe space for coming out of that, that cloud.
Yeah. And also what I've had a lot of experience with is ignoring. I know that something's not, I know my intuition is telling me something and I ignore it consciously. I can't even give myself the excuse of like, oh, I just wasn't aware. I wasn't really checking in with myself. No, I knew. And I was just not listening to it for as long as possible. And that breeds misery. So,
Yep.
So to be aligned with ourselves simply means to listen. So if you have a strong visceral reaction to something telling you, I don't like this, listen to it. And when you find something that energizes you and makes you happy, listen to that information as well. And those aren't always the biggest things. Like that's why you have to be so in tune with yourself. It could be a small voice, but most of us at some point have lost touch with our true self. And we were taught to forget our dreams, ignore our intuition, and follow the path we are, quote, supposed to follow. Even when we believe, this is the tricky thing, even when we believe that we are following our dreams, sometimes we end up realizing that those dreams were never really ours.
Yeah.
And that they were based on the expectations of our friends, our parents, society. I think this happens a lot. I've seen it happen a lot in other people, and it's easier sometimes to see things objectively than in yourself. So it's important to then look at yourself.
I've seen that happen in like relationships.
Yes.
You do things, you change a career or change a lifestyle based on your significant other. And then that fucks with your identity and your perception of yourself so heavy.
Yeah. And just like assuming, the cookie cutter life that, ideally you're supposed to white picket fence, you go to college, you get a job, you have a relationship, you get married, you have kids, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, or there's an order of operations that are just expected to, and that those are supposed to just equal success and fulfillment and happiness and, societal acceptance. But too many times they're just that isn't the answer for most of us. Some people, I believe, do find true fulfillment in these things, but a lot of times, and career-wise, especially people thinking they are following their dreams, but then when they really peel it back, they're like, this is actually my parents' dream for me.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Yeah.
So essentially, we want to feel loved and accepted, even if that means abandoning our true self, which is why we follow other people's dreams and mistake them for our own. The problem is living that way is not easy. Pleasing others and pretending to be someone we're not is not only sad, it's completely exhausting.
So what does living in alignment look like? Here are some indicators that you're on the right path. So 1, you're getting clarity on what you want from your life. When you're not in alignment with your true self, you're letting others dictate how you feel and think about everything, since there are no boundaries between you and those closest to you. And like this is a really good follow-up to the boundaries conversation and episode that we had, because I think boundaries and like actually listening to yourself and sitting with yourself and understanding what's actually true for you and being in alignment, they go hand in hand. If you don't have boundaries, you're most likely in denial about what's not working for you.
Yes.
However, when you start shedding some layers of your conditioning, you're led to the center of your being. This makes you realize you're worthy of expressing yourself, which is huge. I know. I know. Think about that. Like the worthiness of expressing yourself.
Yeah.
That is a constant thing to remind yourself. I mean, we have a podcast and it's like, should we be talking about this or should we talk about that?
I know. And it sounds so simple, but it's like, because we get too hung up, we skip that step and go straight to what am I expressing? Do I feel like, but we skip the aspect of like, I am worthy of expressing. And then I should deal with how I express and what I express. But just the worthiness of expressing, we skip over that. And I think a lot of people then don't believe they're worthy of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what am I going to say that's different than anybody else? What am I, what point do I make? Are my feelings valid or what am I thinking valid?
Yep.
You're just shutting yourself off from truly expressing yourself.
Yeah.
It makes you realize which values align with you, which dreams you want to follow, which wounds need healing, and which people have your best interests at heart. It doesn't mean you have all the answers you need. It means you know what makes you truly happy, and you're committed to your happiness regardless of what everyone else thinks. So it doesn't matter what people expect of you. You know, like I know a lot of people that went to acting school with me who don't do that anymore. And they feel like, no, I got to keep doing this because I don't want to let people down. Like, who cares about letting people down? You're letting yourself down. You're letting your future down.
And it's a combination of, I think it's a combination of being afraid to let people down. And then your ego that's like, well, I said I was an actor. So if I'm not acting, it looks like I didn't make it or I gave up.
Yeah. You're a
all
quitter.
Of those things. Yeah. And it's like, the whole narrative, we touched on this in another episode, but the whole narrative around failing or quitting is very fucked up. And today, because why would you continue with something that's not feeding you anymore? It's okay to quit.
Yeah.
I think it's just, we get all caught up, if something's, you don't quit just because something's hard, if it's what you really want to do, of course. But if you really are like, this actually isn't aligned with me anymore, it's okay to step away and not worry about like, what other people are going to think that you just couldn't hack it or whatever it might be.
Yeah, there's so many pros to it. There was like a TikTok. There's a popular one that it's this guy that asked people who are in rich cars, or I forget, like how much money they make. And like when they answer, and like the people that make a lot of money, like I'm a this. I work in. I think this one woman, she's like, I work in tech. I think she had just left. I think she worked for TikTok actually. And I forget what she was doing, but something in tech. And she makes like $200,000, $300,000 a year. And he was like, do you have one piece of advice for people? And she was like, quit. She was like, it actually is really good for you on your resume to be job hopping, to like, don't stick at one place for long. Like it actually behooves you to not stay at, like quit.
Yeah.
Like,
because it shows that you're consciously pursuing your fulfillment.
And you have so many different experiences at different places that makes you more attractive. And, and that you're not settling. You're not like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the second sign that you are living in alignment is you're beginning to trust your intuition. So we all have an inner guidance system that supports us. But the problem is when you've neglected it for too long, you don't even recognize it anymore. And there's a difference between, a lot of people are like, well, I don't have that, or it's gone. It never leaves you. You quiet. If you don't pay attention to the voice, it's going to get quieter and quieter. But it is still there at all times, available to you. The more you listen to it, the stronger it gets. Alignment always involves a strong relationship with your intuition. Without it, you end up listening to the voice of your ego, which wants you to stay in your comfort zone instead of growing and expanding. In the book, Who You Were Meant to Be, Dr. Lindsay Gibson says, when we are faced with questions that have no answer except those found within ourselves, ironically, we often do not know where to turn for advice. Accustomed to weighing the opinions of others or judging the appropriateness of our desires by the values of those around us, it does not occur to us to just listen to our inner voice. Yet, in its quiet, persistent way, the underlying mind keeps delivering the mail. Message after message piles up, whether we are opening them or not. The underlying mind can only deliver. It cannot force us to open the envelope.
Interesting.
And that's like, I think that the most important questions that come to us in life are the ones that only we have the answer to inside ourselves. Like the biggest things, like when it comes to your relationships, what you're spending your time doing, all of these big things in life. Why am I here? All those existential questions. Nobody else can answer them for us. So those are the types of questions that only we have the answers to, but those are the types of questions that we seek answers from everywhere else and everyone else, especially loved ones, because we trust their opinion. But it's like,
how would they know?
How would they know?
Yeah.
And oftentimes we know people just resign themselves to the fact that, oh, my intuition isn't strong or my intuition isn't good. Or, and it's really just like, you're not practicing listening to it. And it is a practice. I think the practice comes in the smallest of ways, where like the big decisions, you practice in the small time so that when it's the big leagues, you actually can hear your intuition. And so the little things, even like, you have this, I was hearing a story the other day where this guy was talking about how he was driving from his house to his neighbor's. He lives in the country. There's not a lot of traffic on the road. And he very rarely puts his seatbelt on just to go a mile down the road in the country to his friend's house. But he got in the car and found himself buckling up. And then he noticed it and he was like, that's weird. I don't usually. And something in him was like, just do it. So he did it. And he got in a car accident on the way over and he was fine. But those are the little things that, you're like, why am I doing this? That's weird. Or you have a dream or something's nagging at you and you're like, my brother just today was like, I don't know why. I just had this thought of like, I haven't backed up my external hard drive with all my writing in a long time. And so I did it today. And the amount of times that we have a little tiny, however quiet thing inside of us that tells us to do something, we're like, oh yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. Next day, your thing crashes and you're like, why didn't I listen to that?
Yes, that happens to me all the time. It's interesting too, like when you're dependent on others, or not dependent on others, or when you're seeking advice from others and you're not actually listening to your own voice. There is a part of you that I've seen with other people and me, like kind of a reverse psychology, where your friends are giving you advice and you can think that you're listening to your gut. You're like, instead, like, oh no, I'm listening to my intuition. But what you're really doing is just wanting to do the opposite of what they do.
Yeah.
That's also a thing when you're relying on other people. You could be relying on them to actually do whatever they want you to do, or you just want to do the opposite because it feels good.
And you call it your intuition.
And you call it your intuition. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
And you conflate the two, which can be really, really...
It's a good point.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's a really hard trick to understand, like, is this something that I truly want to do? Or am I just doing this out of spite? Or this is the bad thing, the naughty thing to do?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna show them all, but I don't have to live to those standards.
Yeah.
So also, if you're living within alignment, you feel grateful for everything, even the painful experiences. This is so interesting.
Yeah.
Unlike what many people think, gratitude is not about toxic positivity or ignoring your problems. It's not about saying, I'm only going to focus on the positive and ignore the rest.
Yeah. That doesn't work.
Talking about
We were just talking about this.
It's about, I know things are tough, but I also know this too shall pass. Your inner self recognizes the importance of your worst experiences because it knows you needed them to get to the point where you're at today. When you're connected to this part of you, you feel immense gratitude for the smallest things in life. And that's everything can exist all together.
Yes.
Like you can understand when something is toxic in your life, but you can also distance yourself from it and being like, I am not that.
Yeah.
And I can be above that.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to wreck your sense of self at the same time.
And just like allowing it to, that what you said is so important. Acknowledging that multiple things can exist simultaneously. I think we're so used to putting things in categories and this is good, this is bad. And it can't be both. It's this or that. But there are times like when I've been in the throes of heartbreak or something where you know that like, yeah, this is awful. I feel like shit. However, I know this is an important time for me because whatever I work through and heal within myself during these dark times right now, it's gonna shape who I am when I come out of it, and that's the reward. And so that's a way to be grateful for the hard times without dismissing and denying the hard times. Because you'd be like, this is shit. Like my life is shit right now. I hate everything, and I'm grateful for whatever this is transforming me into.
Yeah. And if you don't allow yourself to sit in it and actually experience what you're experiencing or process the negative things that happen to you, you'll be doomed to repeat those mistakes too.
Yes.
You'll be doomed to go back into that relationship, back into that job that did not serve you, that was knocking you out of your alignment because you were just too afraid to process. You were too afraid to confront those things.
So another sign that you're doing well, you feel safe and secure. So control is an illusion. And the best thing we can do is be in the present moment with no fear of the future or attachment to the past. It's like a delicate tightrope to walk. Sure, you may still have bouts of anxiety and depression every now and then, but you accept them and you use them to honor your feelings and release your emotions instead of taking them as a sign that there's something wrong with you. That's the hole that people spiral into, where it's like, you want to feel good all the time, but that's inhuman. So when you don't feel good, a lot of times, if you haven't developed this side of, yourself, it's easy to just blame it on yourself. What's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I have a lot of,
most of us in today's society have hypervigilant, dysregulated nervous systems that make it very difficult for us to stay calm, mindful, and at ease. Regardless of religious or spiritual beliefs, life is much easier when you believe that there are forces both within you and outside of you filled with wisdom and ready to support you. And this, I really, really believe is true because it doesn't have to, it is aside from religion or spirituality. Usually it ties in if you have a religion or a spirituality that you adhere to, but even if you don't, it's just the acknowledgement that there is wisdom within you and around you that you can tap into that will support you if you choose to look for it.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think about how society's changed and how, when you were talking about like how our nervous systems are not regulated. And I feel like there's so much that contributes to that, social media, all the devices that, that are always running and the access to news 24/7 and the access to your friends and family 24/7 and what they're all up to
24/7.
Yeah. So you are constantly bombarded with everybody else's successes, possible failures, but when it comes to social media, most likely successes. But in the news, you're looking at failure and devastation and travesty all the time. So it's like to kind of cut yourself off and listen to yourself in times when you're so bombarded with other people's and other energies. It's going to make it so much harder for you.
Oh my God.
To be in alignment. So if these are the things, and there's one more thing, what a feat to be able to kind of quiet that noise.
Yes. I know.
But lastly on this, when you're in alignment, you feel connected to nature and the world around you. We've had conversations about nature.
Episode about it.
Yep. The more aligned you are with your inner self, the more connected you feel to every human, every animal, every tree, every living organism. You see their life force, and you know they deserve to be here as much as you do. I am like, there's so much about this that I have to kind of like sit and kind of, I'm not gonna get emotional, but
You can. This is our show.
I know. I'm also PMS. But I don't know. It's a really good reminder of like I'm on a vegetarian journey, like, because I've been noticing a sensitivity to things, and it's like I'll judge myself, like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, I just want to eat meat, I just want to eat steak, and it's like I'm getting more purposeful with what I'm doing, but I'll forget. You know what I mean? So there's so many things on this list that it's like, wait, I've done that. Wait, I've done that. But then I've also gone 5 steps back.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't
keep reminding yourself to do it.
Exactly. Like, and you don't think you're right, because, and you know, when it comes to, for me, and we've talked about this before, like a huge moment in my life where I felt unaligned was working in the service industry and having not a creative.
Oh my God, me too.
Well, I had a creative bone in my body, but I wasn't doing anything with it.
Yeah.
And I just kept ignoring it. And I was just like,
your outer world had bared no reflection to your inner world.
Exactly. Yeah. Nothing felt right, but I was just in a zombie-like state, being like, whatever, one day it'll be fine. I guess I was right, but like still, it wasn't, I
know.
Yeah, it was like, I was depressed, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I was so used to it. I didn't realize that I was just going through the motions. I didn't realize that I was feeling these things because I was never checking in. So when the pandemic happened and I started doing things I wanted to do, like this podcast and auditioning more, and then writing and creating a project and doing all these things, I am now in a process of feeling the things that I had ignored.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, right? I'm in therapy now. So it's like, I am like allowing myself to sit in feelings, and it is so hard.
Yeah.
I'll lose sleep over it. I feel like I'm not getting better, but I just feel like I am now doing the work that I should have done and getting aligned. And you can easily convince yourself in that state that you're not doing the right thing, but you are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because it's not gonna, what do they say? It gets worse before it gets better.
Right.
Because a lot of times, and even when you get, that's true on the surface too, even when you get a facial, sometimes if it's like a deep facial, for the next couple of days, you're like, all these breakouts are coming to the surface because it's detoxing. So that happens first, and then, then your skin is glowing. But that's kind of what it is on the inside, because you can't excavate without digging.
Yeah. And it's going to be an imposter syndrome element that happens with this too, right? Like, you're going to be like, wait, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing what calls to me, right? I'm getting more creative, but then I'm also feeling these things I haven't felt before, or I'm ruminating on things I haven't felt before. And it's because you never allowed yourself.
Yes.
You were so easy to compartmentalize and move on.
Because you were so unhappy.
Yeah. But
the irony is that you were so unhappy that you were convincing yourself you weren't. Well, we knew we were unhappy, but it was, I think, the degree with which
I didn't feel worthy of expressing myself. And now that I do, I'm expressing myself. So if I'm allowing stuff to come out of me, whether it's on this podcast or creatively in my writing or in acting or just with myself, it's going to feel foreign. Yeah. It's going to feel like someone else. Uncomfortable.
And unfamiliar.
Yeah. And that's
yeah, but it's like just having to sit in that and know that it wasn't your practice or your habit before. So just by that definition, it's not going to feel comfortable and normal right away.
Yeah.
And so we cannot rely on comfortability as an indicator of if this is right or wrong. Because actually, the less comfortable you are, the more you are shifting and allowing yourself to expand.
Yeah.
And that's a good, because you're referencing career, and then the experience that I was thinking of when a time when I wasn't in alignment was a relationship. And I knew there's so many layers, when you're a little kid, you just think like, well, people are in love or they're not, it's a good relationship or it's a bad one. And it's just that black and white. And then, when you're an adult, you're like, oh, that's not true.
Yeah.
And I was in one for so long Well, I loved him. He loved me. Everything is one of the most beautiful people I know to this day. But it wasn't right. It wasn't right in a romantic sense in so many ways for a long time. And we just, and I mean, now, and we have conversations about it together between us, so we talk about it all the time, but we both knew it in our intuition, in our gut, in our hearts. And sometimes we would admit it, different shades of it out loud when we were together and, a fight or discussion or something. But we were just both living in it. And it was like, it wasn't a case of, oh, I didn't even realize. The scary thing is, it doesn't just stop at being self-aware. After that, you have to care. You
Yeah.
have to like do something
about it.
Yeah, because it was just this misery of like, I know that this isn't right. I know I'm unhappy. He knows he's unhappy. I know he's unhappy. He knows I'm unhappy. Like, what are we doing? But it
Yeah.
was just this, I mean, it's a lot more complicated. It's never easy because, when you love somebody, you love them. So there's that layer. We were living together. It was years together. All of these things we love being around each other. We got along. We cracked up together. We shared everything, and it was comfortable, and it was familiar, and yet it was so unhealthy and unhappy at the same time. And you can't. In my situation, you couldn't point it to. There was no abuse. There was no like hard line that you could draw and be like, where someone would come to me and be like, "You need to get out of this," because
Yeah. That's
everybody
evil.
like
Yeah, yeah.
loved him too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
including my family.
There was no
my
bad
parents.
guy.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
wasn't exactly. There's no bad guy. It's just we were the bad guys because we were ignoring that inner voice,
Mm.
and it's just so important. There's a book that I read during that time, and I've read I think again since then, but and I've mentioned it in episodes, but it's called Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh, the best.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's just
I haven't finished it, but like I've read different passages because of you. I have the book too. I mean, like
doses. You don't have to read it all the way through. It's like little. You just pick things
but it
out.
is.
Oh my God, and it basically talks about like all the various archetypes of women and the female throughout history, through myths, through legends, but also just reality. But it talks a lot about your intuition and staying in tune with it. She mentions a lot about, she calls it la que sabe, she who knows, like that voice in your head or your heart that everybody has, and just the importance of honoring it. And the cycles of transformation, like it, I think the reason we avoid our intuition a lot of the times is because it signifies that you're going to have to end something or something will be destroyed if you listen to your intuition. Cause it's like, man, this relationship is not working. This job is not working. And then there comes the fear of losing something and destruction, but it's always a cycle. And so there's a quote from the book that I love. And she says, "There is no such thing as a work-free transformation. We know that we will have to burn to the ground in one way or another, and then sit right in the ashes of who we once thought we were and go on from there." And that's scary. And that's why we ignore our intuition, even if we hear it.
The worthiness of expressing yourself.
And just like sitting in the ashes of who you once were is a really terrifying thought, because whether that's who you once were, like you're talking about a career, like you're sitting and you always wanted to be there, but there you are, and you're sitting in the ashes of this, a service industry job that just allowed you to compartmentalize all these things. And or I'm sitting in the ashes of this relationship that I knew wasn't right, but now I'm just sitting in the destruction of it. And you have to rebuild, like remember who you are.
It's the bravest thing you could do.
Yeah.
It's the bravest thing you could do. Achieving alignment hinges on self-reflection. We all desire to have control over many aspects of our lives. It's human nature. When life isn't going as planned, we may want to change things so that it goes the way we intended. But if you've lived long enough, you know that life doesn't work that way. In some respects, it's more difficult to control your life than to simply flow and align with it. It's so true.
Yeah, it is.
It's like there's a phrase, I mean, a lot of like, I mean, I'm not an alcoholic, but like a lot of stuff with AA, like grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Yeah.
The strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge. Because control is the root of so many maladies and disorders, even like,
Oh yeah.
so many.
It is definitely something that I myself am always working on, to accept the things I cannot change
Yeah.
and know that it's okay if I don't.
Yeah.
And change the things that are within my possibility. But you have to really do the work to figure out what that is, because it's really
Yes.
easy to just think that you can control this when it has nothing to do with you, and it's okay.
Right.
Our need for control usually stems from desire or fear. But there are ways to deal with both of these things in an aligned manner through self-reflection. Silence your brain chatter until you can hear that inner knowing. The voice may be quiet now, but the more you practice listening to it, the louder it will become. It is never lost.
That's the one thing to hang on to. Even when you don't hear it, just know it's not lost.
Yeah.
It's always within you.
Yeah.
Just got to dig it back out.
Yes.
So ask yourself some questions to ask yourself when you're trying to find that voice and trying to hear it. Is this giving me energy? Is this bringing me joy? Does this feel like something I genuinely like, or is it something I just want to be in control of? This process may take some time. Becoming more aligned with our inner selves will not happen overnight. And also I feel the need to say, all being in alignment doesn't always or even often mean bringing you joy. Like, that question is important to ask when in certain scenarios, but, does this feel like something that is genuinely like necessary? I think is a more important question. The joy is important in some aspects, but sometimes it's like the thing that will bring you, there's pain before the joy. You have to end the job, end the relationship. Making that decision doesn't bring me joy, but later it will. So that's a separation.
Trust yourself.
Yeah. So one last thing to remember is that life is never stagnant. Our plans get canceled, we get broken up with, our bodies change, and we discover new passions. Let's say you've spent most of your life running, but now you're in your 50s and your body can no longer handle that level of activity. You can continue pushing your body past its limit or find a new form of exercise that is equally fulfilling. When plans change, we tend to look at this as a negative. Instead, let's challenge ourselves to look at it as an opportunity. So once you let go of the things you're not in control of, doors you never knew were there will open. That has happened so many times for me, where I'm like, I finally release something. I'm trying to control the way that it ends or make sure everyone's feeling okay or that it doesn't get ugly. And once I let go of that and let whatever's going to happen, there's like a door right in front of you that you didn't even know was there. You just had no idea, and it opens up.
Yep.
So of course things won't always work out the way we expected or planned. But if we ask ourselves, what new adventures are before me now are before me now that I'm on a different path?
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
The best things in my life have been when I opened that door.
Yeah.
And especially, and through rubble too, I would say, like through the ashes. Like I remember my first relationship, like that breakup was so devastating because it was my first like love, you know what I mean? And it was so devastating. And I was dating again, but I was closed off. And I got to a point where I was like, fuck it. I don't want to be closed off anymore. I want to meet people. I want to meet someone. Ryan was there. Yes. That's when I met Ryan.
Wow.
I didn't even think about it. It was a party I wasn't even supposed to go to. You know what I mean? If I didn't go, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The pandemic, I didn't think that like my acting career could I didn't think that I could make money on just acting alone. I didn't think it was possible. That's why I stuck with the service, the service industry job. And the pandemic happened. I lost that job and I was just like, what are we going to do? We had the podcast with like, thank God I was still doing something creative and I had like some control over
an outlet.
And right during that, where I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. My anxiety got bad. My depression got bad. That's when I started booking more jobs. It was just so weird. It was just like, there's like a pressure off there too, right? Because like, I think that's what's so great about things happening when you least expect it, when you actually just like, the door's open, but like, fuck it. You don't know what's going to happen. There's a pressure that's released off of you that allows yourself the room to do things where you could possibly fail. Like, I didn't think Ryan was going to come, but I had no expectations.
Yeah, nothing.
So there was no pressure.
No fears.
There wasn't like, okay, I'm going to pick, I'm going to look, I'm ready to meet a guy, but I'm going to like have all this list of all the things they have to check off. And if he doesn't approach me in this way, it's not, you know what I mean? Like there was no pressure and it happened.
Right.
There was no pressure, to make money with acting. Like I was just living off unemployment, and I was gonna like, oh, I guess I have to find another service industry job as soon as the restaurants open up again. But then auditions started coming in, and I was just I had no pressure in these auditions.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like, I need to book this, because I was just like, I don't know. I was already so kind of not detached, but like
a little bit detached. Detachment, I think, is the key.
Yes.
To happiness.
Yes.
But it has to be a healthy detachment. But that sounds like that.
Yeah. It's. I still wanted to do it, but there wasn't like I have to book this. Yes. So it was kind of like there was a pressure off me. And that was what attracted the more jobs. It sounds very, I don't want it to sound like
woo-woo.
Woo-woo?
But there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
Like my last job that I had was a really, really unhealthy, emotionally toxic situation for me and my coworkers. And then the day that it ended, within an hour, I had my next job.
Yes.
Making more than I had in my last one, in a relevant industry, doing creative like everything I wanted. But I was and I had wanted out of that previous situation. I learned from this, I was trying too hard to control the way it went to make sure everything went smoothly, that my like transition out was smooth. And once I released that, let it go up in flames. And that it's like everything that was trying to get to me, that was blocked, finally reached me. And then you realize that the things my blessings that were coming to me, all the things that were trying to get to me, were right on the other side of a thin wall. They weren't that far away. I just had to knock the wall down, and then I'm within the hour.
It's
and
so
like
funny.
You met Ryan, like it's right away.
It's so weird.
I also take those things happening as I believe that those are signs that you are in alignment.
Yes.
Once something comes to you that was like, a gift or something you've been wanting or something, and it reaches you, it can't reach you if you're not in alignment. So for whatever thing you're doing, when those things little serendipitous things start to happen, or things start to seem like a coincidence, or, you're receiving all these things you've been asking for, that's a sign that you're in alignment, I believe.
Manifestation is so key. And there's this quote I have on my phone that I look at every day, and it says, I don't chase, I attract. What belongs to me will simply find me.
Yes.
And it is something I believe in wholeheartedly.
Agree.
I don't chase things. I don't. I just don't. I mean, like, not to say I don't put in effort. I put in effort.
But chasing things chasing things imply that they are either running away from you.
Yes.
Or like, if something is just, it's so hard, you're trying to have to force it to make it work or chase it down. That's not yours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sentence serves me so much. And I think I saw that line might have went viral. I think a lot of people, will say that, and like things will start happening.
Yeah.
And it's really just manifestation. It's allowing yourself to do that inner work, to really sit with yourself and think about what will really put you truly in alignment,
and surrender
to it, because those things will find you.
They will they're actually trying to get to you right now.
Yeah.
Because even when I like that relationship I was talking about, when we finally let it go, both of our lives got better. Like both of us got healthier, happier. All these things came to each of us individually that I believe were trying to get to us this whole time, because we're not we co-create our realities with
100%.
Whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever. But I think we co-create. We have a say in what happens to us, but we're not in control of everything. There's something else there. So when you do your part, you will be met halfway. And oftentimes once you release something that you know was bad, you don't know what's coming next, it's scary, you might have a period, whatever. Doing that always pays off if it's in alignment.
Yeah. Just know the difference between what's not working, what you're trying so hard to make work, or you're ignoring it completely. Like it both happens. And you'll be rewarded.
You will.
10 times over. Trust. But like, trust yourself in that process when you're doing that. Like, cause like me, it's like, you can think, cause it's so uncomfortable to like, actually, I don't know, meet yourself. You know what I mean? It's like to meet what works for you can be scary. It is. Cause it's like, I don't know, when you're so used to doubting yourself, and you're so used to that toxic environment and being treated a certain way or feeling a certain way consistently, it is hard to to remind yourself that you deserve
Yeah.
all that
Because we
happiness.
create these realities and stories in our heads about who we are and therefore what we deserve. And those narratives are not, usually they're not conscious. We're not sitting down being like, I mean, sometimes we are if we're depressed, but in general, throughout life, we're not like ending every day like, I am a shitty person who does bad at work and doesn't deserve blah, blah. But these narratives are being created in our minds all the time. And we just have to like deprogram them, deny them somehow.
Amen.
But yeah, when you do, you're rewarded.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not woo woo. Like this is
No.
like 100%. Like we just want to say this is very, very doable things.
Yeah.
To this is a baseline. This is just figuring out what serves you.
Yeah.
Like don't, alignment can feel like a woo woo statement, where it's like a divine,
all those overused
but
terms.
it's so true.
Yeah.
Whether you pray or you manifest, it's the same thing.
And there's a lot of,
it's putting yourself first.
Yeah, exactly. It's prioritizing your own fulfillment.
Exactly.
And I say fulfillment as opposed to happiness because fulfillment can include hard times and sadness because that enriches your life and your character. You can't always chase happiness, but fulfillment, I think we can pursue consistently.
Yep.
So hopefully this episode, if any of you are in a weird place or you have there's a little voice in your head that's telling you something's off and you're ignoring it. Hopefully this gives you the courage to just listen to it and embrace, let go, let it go up in flames, let whatever happens. And I guarantee you something better is around the corner.
Mm-hmm. Or fix. And if it's not, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go. Let it go.
There you go.
Oh God. Sorry about that.
No, she's not.
But anyway, we are Alyssa and Molly.
Yes.
Doing our sign-offs first. No. We are on YouTube, SOS with Molly and Alyssa. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcasts, we're there. So rate and review us, subscribe, everything. It helps us reach more people in the algorithm. Yes. And we're on Instagram, SOS, at the SOS Pod, Twitter, all that.
Yes, and Patreon. Did you say that? Okay.
Nope.
And now I'm just like blacking out. Okay, Patreon, $3, $7, $11 a month really helps us. And I'm Molly Cottrell.
I'm Melissa Rosano.
And here's to turning meltdowns
into magic.